The stars across the galaxy flickered as the ancient Grand Council gathered once again, a meeting unseen by human eyes, but carrying the weight of thousands of worlds. Their halls, suspended above a dying red star, echoed with the voices of many species, each more strange and proud than the last. For centuries, they had ruled over the lesser civilizations, deciding who would rise and who would fall. Today, however, their discussion was different, tense, and filled with an unease none could explain easily. At the heart of the great assembly floated a single blue sphere of light, slowly spinning, carrying within it the final transmission received from Earth, a small young planet that once begged for a seat at their grand table, but was refused without hesitation. Now, that same planet had sent a warning. The council replayed the message once more, a human ambassador, standing straight in a polished dark uniform, speaking in a voice filled not with anger, but with cold certainty. "We seek peace," he said, his eyes unwavering, "but we are armed and ready. Know this: any hand raised against humanity will find itself broken. We wish for friendship, but we will not surrender." The counselors exchanged glances, some filled with amusement, others with irritation, but most with a growing, sharp fear that tightened in their chests like an invisible hand. For in the human's voice, there was no arrogance, no bluff, only a promise. Some spoke loudly, mocking Earth's bravado, calling it the bark of a young cub pretending to be a wolf. Others, the older ones, remained silent, remembering the old stories, the Terran wars, the burning of the Red Reavers, the survival of Earth through plagues and starquakes that had wiped out empires far stronger and older than theirs. Humanity had always been strange. They adapted too fast, fought too hard, and survived things that should have destroyed them. Their history was soaked in struggle, and it had shaped them into something the Council had never fully understood, and perhaps that was their greatest mistake. As the debates raged, somewhere in the darkness between the stars, unseen by all, human fleets moved like ghosts. These were not the clumsy ships of decades past, but sleek giants with dark hulls that bent light and sensors around them. They were no longer begging for acceptance. They were preparing for survival. Earth knew what the Council was capable of. They had seen smaller civilizations erased because they refused to obey the rules set by those who considered themselves masters of the galaxy. Humanity had learned from the downfall of others, had studied ancient wars and betrayals, and had built weapons not for conquest, but for a last stand that would shake the stars themselves if needed. The Council, in their arrogance, failed to see that every delay, every rejection, every insult had not weakened humanity's spirit, it had forged it into steel. As the Council debated, news began to filter in from the edge of known space. Patrols gone missing. Listening stations falling silent. Probes returning damaged, or not at all. The Varkan Dominion, a race of proud warriors, had dispatched a fleet to remind humanity of their place. But when their battle cruisers dropped out of warp near a remote human colony, they found not a helpless outpost but a fortress. The Varkan ships, larger and more heavily armed, launched their attack without hesitation, only to be torn apart by defense satellites that fired beams so sharp and fast that the mighty cruisers barely had time to raise shields. The Varkan survivors limped back to Council space, their ships shattered, their pride broken, their commanders silent and pale as they reported the defeat. The Council chambers grew cold. It was clear now. The humans had not sent their warning in desperation. They had sent it because they were ready. And they had not even needed their main fleet to prove it. Across the galaxy, old alliances trembled. Ancient empires whispered among themselves. Could it be true? Could these newcomers, these Terrans, stand alone against the weight of the galaxy? Some argued to crush them quickly before they grew stronger. Others counseled caution, seeing the folly of pushing a determined enemy into a corner. But all knew one thing: the balance of power had shifted. Earth was no longer a forgotten backwater. It was now a name spoken with both fear and curiosity. On Earth, in the underground command centers hidden beneath oceans and mountains, humanity waited, silent and watching. Their leaders did not celebrate the victory against the Varkan fleet. They prepared for what they knew was coming: a test of their strength, a trial by fire they had seen written in the history of every. rising power before them. Humanity did not seek war. They valued peace, trade, learning, and the chance to explore the stars. But they had learned through pain that peace was not given. It was earned, protected by those willing to stand firm when others sought to take it away. The message was not just a warning to the Council, it was a promise to themselves. Never again would humanity kneel. Never again would they allow others to decide their fate. As the stars turned silently in the endless night, and alien worlds buzzed with rumor and fear, humanity's ships continued to spread, unseen and unstoppable, carrying not only weapons, but the will to survive and thrive. The final message from Earth was not just a declaration of strength. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one written by a species that had been tempered by the harshest trials, sharpened by countless struggles, and made unbreakable by a spirit that would never surrender. And as the galaxy listened, some in disbelief, others in terror, one truth became clear to all: humanity was no longer asking for a place among the stars. They were claiming it with open hands offered in peace and steel clenched behind them, ready for those who would test their resolve. The Varkan Dominion had always seen itself as the hammer of the galaxy, a brutal force that shaped weaker civilizations through fear and strength, and when humanity's final warning echoed through the stars, the Varkan High Council met not in fear, but in laughter, convinced that these upstart Terrans were no more than loud insects making noise in the void. So, they decided that a demonstration was needed, a sharp and brutal reminder of the natural order, and in their arrogance, they selected a colony named New Dawn, a small human outpost resting near the border of Varkan-controlled space, believing it would be an easy target, something to crush swiftly to send a message of their own. So they launched their Fleet 70 warships armed with the latest plasma cannons, crewed by warriors bred for nothing but conquest, and they moved like wolves toward a flock of sheep, not realizing that the sheep had grown fangs, sharp and ready, hidden behind quiet smiles. And as the Varkan fleet dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find a few poorly built defense satellites and weak ground forces, they instead faced a scene that froze even the most hardened commander's. New Dawn was not an outpost. It was a fortress, surrounded by massive orbital platforms glowing with energy shields, weapon arrays tracking the incoming ships with cold precision. And before the Varkan commander could even issue orders, the first volley was unleashed, beams of searing blue light slicing through the void faster than the eye could follow, cutting cleanly through the heavy armor of the lead ships, leaving them drifting and burning, and chaos erupted as the once proud Varkan fleet scrambled to return fire. But it was no use, because every move they made was already predicted, every tactic they deployed countered before it could even take shape, and it became clear within minutes that they were not facing an unprepared colony, they were facing a military masterpiece designed to withstand full-scale war. And it was not just the weapons that terrified them, but the terrifying silence from the human side. No taunts, no threats, only cold, relentless efficiency as one Varkan ship after another was disabled or destroyed, targeted not for maximum casualties, but to cripple engines, disable weapons, leave crews alive but powerless, floating in the void, witnesses to their own helplessness, and panic spread like fire, breaking the chain of command, with some ships trying to flee, others charging blindly forward. But it made no difference, for the humans had prepared for every possibility, and even the space around New Dawn was mined with fields of smart drones, tiny, unseen hunters that tore through armor like paper, and in less than an hour, what had begun as an arrogant show of force had turned into a massacre, not of lives, but of pride and power, and the few Varkan ships that escaped limped back into hyperspace, their hulls scarred, their spirits shattered, carrying with them a warning far more powerful than any words. Humanity's message had been real, and they had underestimated it at their own peril. And when the news reached the Varkan High Council, the laughter died in their throats, replaced by an icy silence as they realized they had made the first mistake, a mistake that would echo through the corridors of power across the galaxy. And the Grand Council, already uneasy from humanity's broadcast, now watched with growing dread. For if the mighty Varkan fleet could be dismantled so swiftly, what hope did the others have if war truly came? And old alliances began to fray as fear took root, whispers of new strategies, new deals, perhaps even treaties with humanity and Earth. Watching all this unfold, remained silent, offering no gloating, no demands, only standing ready, sending a single new transmission across the stars. We did not wish for this. Let this be the last mistake. And the words, simple and clear, struck harder than any weapon could, because the galaxy finally understood the truth. Humanity did not need to conquer by force. Their strength lay in patience, preparation, and an iron will that could not be bent, and the first mistake was not the attack itself, but underestimating a species that had been born on a world of storms and fire, that had learned to survive not by dominating nature, but by enduring it, adapting, rising stronger after every fall. And now, with the stars spread before them, they would not be prey. They would not be servants. They would be equals, or they would be feared. The galaxy held its breath after the fall of the Varkan fleet, the silence stretching long and heavy, but beneath that silence, darker currents began to flow. Unseen by most, felt only by those who understood that power never vanished quietly. It shifted, it evolved, it struck from new angles, and while the Varkan licked their wounds and the lesser empires reconsidered their alliances, others began to see opportunity hidden within the growing fear. For shadows moved where light faltered, and ancient forces long thought dormant stirred once more, reaching out with quiet hands to shape the future. Moo, and it was in these unseen halls of influence that the real danger grew, not in open battle, but in whispered conspiracies, secret meetings, and hidden weapons. Built in the darkness, because if brute strength had failed, then perhaps cunning and treachery would succeed where fleets could not, and so agents were sent toward Earth, not with armadas, but with quiet steps, blending into the edges of human expansion, gathering intelligence, sowing seeds of doubt, hunting for weakness. For surely, they reasoned, a race that fought so fiercely must have vulnerabilities hidden beneath their proud surface, and one such agent, known only by the codename Shadowfang, made his way to New Dawn, hidden among merchant ships and supply caravans. His orders clear: find the cracks, exploit them, and report back. But what he found unsettled even his trained heart, because New Dawn was not a fortress built of fear or paranoia. It was a society forged in unity and preparation, where every citizen, from the smallest child to the eldest worker, knew their role in defense and survival, and yet lived without the suffocating tension one might expect, moving through their days with a quiet purpose that made infiltration almost impossible. And as Shadowfang moved through the colony, he realized the humans were not merely ready for war. They were ready for betrayal, for infiltration, for every dirty trick the galaxy had ever seen. Dread as children played war games that mirrored real battle strategies, as workers maintained hidden bunkers and automated defense grids without hesitation, as civilians drilled emergency protocols without panic, and it became clear that humanity's strength was not just in their weapons or technology, but in the very fabric of their culture, woven tight with threads of resilience and sacrifice. And even worse for Shadowfang, he discovered that the humans were aware of spies like him. They expected them, they planned for them, and they were not hunting him aggressively because they did not fear him. They simply waited, knowing he would either reveal himself through impatience or become a tool in a larger game he did not even understand. And when he tried to contact his handlers, he found his communications subtly jammed. Not enough to confirm suspicion, but enough to isolate him, to make him doubt, and slowly, piece by piece, Shadowfang realized he had not infiltrated New Dawn. He had been allowed in, mouse-stepping willingly into a trap he could not see. And the real terror was not that he would be captured or killed, but that he was being studied, his every move teaching humanity how their enemies thought, how they acted, how they planned, and he was just one of many, as scattered reports from other operatives across human space told the same story: agents disappearing without trace, plans exposed before they could be executed, secret bases uncovered before construction could finish. And a pattern emerged, one that filled the heart of the enemy councils with dread. Humanity was not reacting, predicting, and it was in this grim realization that the true horror of the coming war took shape. Because while the galaxy had been looking at Earth's ships and weapons, they had missed the most dangerous weapon of all: the human mind, sharp, adaptable, ruthless when needed, and absolutely determined. And as Shadowfang made his final desperate attempt to escape, trying to flee aboard a merchant freighter. He was intercepted not by soldiers, but by civilians, an old woman, a young boy, mechanic, all moving with casual precision, boxing him in, disarming him without a single wasted motion. And as he was taken into custody, he was given a simple message to carry back to his masters, not spoken with cruelty, but with a cold, undeniable certainty: the shadows belong to us now. And when the message reached the Dark Councils, it shattered what little hope remained, for they understood that there would be no secret victory, no whispered downfall, only the long, inevitable road to open war. And the galaxy, in its pride, had made the first move, believing it would control the future. But it was humanity, steady and unyielding, who now moved the pieces, unseen and unstoppable. And as preparations for war accelerated on all sides, a chilling thought spread. Among those who had once considered humans nothing more than another primitive species, if this was how they fought in the shadows, what horrors awaited when they stepped fully into the light? The galaxy trembled under a tension it could no longer ignore, a tension that stretched across star systems and crept into every council chamber, every war room, and every battlefield still hidden in planning. And while many still clung to the hope that negotiation or deception could halt the inevitable, the truth grew heavier each passing day. Humanity had changed the rules, and there was no going back, because after years of surviving assassination attempts, sabotage, treaties, secret wars, fought in the dark, Earth no longer played by the quiet diplomacy that had once defined interstellar politics. And now, after seeing how deep the hatred and fear for them ran among the older empires, humanity prepared for something different, something the galaxy had not seen in generations: a war without limits, a war fought not just with weapons but with will. And it all came to a head in the quiet system of Murdes, a place where the peace conference was supposed to happen, where diplomats from every major empire gathered to sign an agreement that would, they claimed, guarantee peace and restrict human expansion. But it was all a lie, a trap designed to humiliate Earth, to isolate them, and to break their spirit before a real invasion could begin. And the humans knew it, had known it from the moment the invitation arrived, because the very language of the treaty was filled with hidden poison, and the presence of enemy fleets just beyond sensor range was proof enough that the words of peace were nothing but a smokescreen for war. Yet humanity did not refuse the invitation. They came, calm and composed, their representatives stepping onto the neutral station with quiet dignity, their ships orbiting nearby, but not firing, not threatening, simply watching. And the other empires mistook that quiet for weakness, mistook the polite smiles for fear, and so they pressed harder, making demands no free people could accept, threatening sanctions, military action, even extermination if Earth did not submit. But the humans listened, their expressions never changing, recording every insult, every threat, every false promise. And when the final terms were laid out, stripping Earth of its colonies, restricting its technology, demanding it disarm and submit to foreign oversight, there was a long, heavy silence, a silence that stretched across the conference hall like a storm about to break. And when the human ambassador finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle, but each word cut deeper than any weapon. We came in good faith, and you offer chains, you offer peace, and behind your backs, you sharpen knives. You mistake our patience for fear. You believe you can break us without consequence. You are wrong. And with that, he tapped a small device on the table, and every screen in the room lit up with images: enemy fleets hidden in the system, sabotage teams planting charges around human colonies, spies stealing classified information, every secret exposed, every betrayal caught in the act. Because humanity had not only expected treachery, they had planned for it. And as panic spread among them, enemy diplomats, their fleets suddenly found themselves cut off, their ships trapped by jamming fields and false navigational data, their soldiers isolated, their supply lines severed. And at that moment, the galaxy realized it had underestimated humanity's ruthlessness once again, because the humans had not come to Murdes to negotiate. They had come to end the illusion of peace forever. And as their ambassador stood, he gave one final statement, his voice carrying across the stunned assembly: "You have shown us the truth. Now we will show you ours." And at that moment, human ships uncloaked across the system, hundreds of them, more than anyone had believed Earth could build in such a short time, surrounding the enemy fleets with quiet, lethal precision, not firing yet, but waiting, daring. The first shot to be fired, and back on Earth, across every colony and station, humanity moved as one, activating wartime protocols, mobilizing fleets, recalling agents, and preparing for a war that would not end until either Earth was destroyed or its enemies were shattered. And in that dark moment, the galaxy stood at the breaking point, balanced between total war and total annihilation, and every empire, every race, every leader who had once thought themselves masters of the stars now faced that terrible decision: stand against humanity and risk extinction, or stand aside and watch as history change forever, because the old way was dead, burned away by betrayal and blood, and what rose in its place would not be stopped by treaties or lies, only by strength. And as the first shots echoed in the cold dark of space, as Murdies burned and fleets scattered in panic, the galaxy knew that nothing could ever return to the way it was, and from that day forward, wherever human ships appeared, a single, terrible truth followed them like a shadow: Earth had been pushed too far, and now there would be no mercy, only survival, and the universe, in its arrogance, had made an enemy it could never defeat. And as the fires of Murtis lit up the void, a simple message echoed across all frequencies, a warning too late to save them: you broke the peace, now face the storm. The galaxy was broken, its proud empires shattered by their own arrogance, and as the smoke of countless battles still rose from dying planets and drifting wreckage fields, humanity stood at the center of it all, not as the destroyer they had been painted to be, but as the survivor, the one force that had endured betrayal after betrayal and refused to fall. And now, with the old powers crippled and the lies of diplomacy exposed for all to see, a new era began, one shaped not by ancient laws or empty promises, but by the raw truth that strength, unity, and willpower would decide the future. And at the heart of this change was Earth, scarred but unbeaten, its people hardened by endless struggle, and they no longer looked outward with naive hope, but with clear eyes and determined hearts. And while many races waited, fearful and uncertain, for revenge or conquest, humanity did not seek blind domination, for they understood that true power was not only in weapons, but in the ability to build something lasting from the ruins of the old. So when the first human fleets entered the devastated core systems, they did not come as conquerors, but as builders, offering a simple choice to all who remained: work together and survive, or remain divided and be swept away by the chaos that still burned in the dark corners of the galaxy. And many, too broken to resist, accepted the offer with desperate hope, while others, still clinging to pride, chose rebellion. And they learned quickly that mercy had its limits, because Earth had no patience left for endless betrayal, and those who rose against them were crushed swiftly, without hatred but without hesitation. And the message was clear: there would be no second chances in this new age, only action and consequence. And as the months turned to years, human-led alliances grew stronger, rebuilding shattered cities, reconnecting lost worlds, forging new trade routes where once there had only been war fleets. And in the quiet places between stars, whispers spread of something incredible happening, something the galaxy had not seen in living memory: cooperation, progress, a future where survival did not depend on deceit. And at the center of it all were humans, not perfect, not without mistakes, but relentless in their belief that the darkness could be pushed back, not by words alone, but by deeds. And yet, even as hope stirred among the survivors, darker forces plotted in the shadows, ancient powers that had not fallen but had simply hidden, watching, waiting for a chance to strike. And as Earth sent envoys to distant systems and built great stations above wounded worlds, the signs of a coming storm began to appear: strange disappearances along the frontier, sudden attacks by unknown ships, silent signals intercepted from long-dead worlds. And the old fear returned, the fear that maybe the galaxy had not yet seen the worst. And humanity, though stronger than ever, prepared once more for battle, understanding that this new era would not be given freely. It would have to be earned, again and again, with blood, sacrifice, and unbreakable will. And so the great fleets were built larger, the alliances made stronger, the defenses layered deeper, and even as the light of a new age shined across countless systems, the shadow of war loomed just beyond sight. The leaders of Earth knew that the time was coming when their strength would be tested not by broken empires, but by something far older and far more dangerous, and in the halls of New Geneva, where once Earth's great leaders had planned for mere survival, now they planned for the survival of all free peoples, crafting strategies and technologies that could stand against the unknown and everywhere across human space. A simple truth was spoken: the galaxy had entered a new era, not because it wanted to, but because it had no choice, and the name of that era would be written by the courage, the unity, and the fierce will of those who refused to bow to fear again. And as the stars burned bright in the endless dark, humanity stood ready to defend what they had built, ready to face whatever new enemy rose from the void, and ready, above all, to prove once again that no force in the universe, no ancient terror or hidden threat, could ever break the spirit that had carried them through the fires of betrayal and war. And as the first strange signals echoed from the edges of explored space, as fleets were mobilized once more and old allies sent desperate calls for aid, humanity answered not with fear, but with purpose, for they understood now that their greatest strength was not in their ships or weapons, but in their unity, their refusal to surrender to despair. And so, with steady hands and unshakable hearts, they moved forward into the unknown, determined to build a future where no power, no empire, no ancient evil could ever again decide the fate of countless worlds in secret. And as the drums of a new war began to beat in the far distance, humanity smiled a grim smile and marched to meet it, carrying with them not only the weapons of survival, but the hope of a galaxy that dared, for the first time in living memory, to dream of something better. And thus the new era truly began, not in silence, but in the unbreakable roar of a people who refused to be forgotten, who refused to be defeated, and who, against every terrible force the universe could throw at them, would stand tall and fight for the future they had earned with blood, fire, and an iron will that no darkness could ever extinguish.